Happy Self-Love Sunday, ladies. I hope that you're doing well. I hope that your journeys are going well. I hope you enjoyed Mother's Day last week. We all deserve a day to just pamper and care for ourselves. Shouldn't just be Mother's Day. We should find time for that quite often, once a week, a couple times a month. But I know it's hard, but especially on Mother's Day, I hope you took your day. Today, I want to come and talk to you about expectations, and particularly about how our expectations truly are the things that hurt us the most. You know, in this line of business, I have many clients, and one of the things I hear them say often is, well, that should, in terms of relationships with friends, or even sometimes their children's or significant others, is they should know, or that should be common sense, or they should know this is how I am, and like I expect for them to do X, Y, and Z. And a lot of times, our level of expectation that we place upon people are just so high and so very different than that person. They can never truly achieve that. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. So, in terms of all relationships, whether it's friendships, significant others, we are two individuals coming together with two different distinct pasts, two different distinct traumas, two different distinct environments sometimes, right? And our family. So, prime example, I was raised in a house, in a two-parent household in the inner city. So if I meet and become friends or decide to get into a relationship with someone who, say, was raised in a single parent household from the suburbs, we're coming from two totally different environments. And what we were brought up watching and seeing, I saw my dad, pay the mortgage, and my father do certain things around the home where this person didn't get to see that. So, or experience that from their vantage point of everyday living. So when we come together, I can't expect for them to act. I can't expect for them to know, and I can't expect for them to do things the way I do, because we come from two totally different backgrounds. Now, what I can do, is have a conversation. What I can do is speak to this my friend or my significant other and my children and explain what my expectations are in friendship, what my expectations are in love, what my expectations are in raising them. I can speak my level of expectation and then allow them to do the same. And then within that, right? Because once we speak, listen, if I can really convey anything to my ladies, is to really get you in the habit of speaking your truth, whatever that is, and not being ashamed of it, being able to be vulnerable and open enough and transparent enough to speak your truth and understand that it's okay. Listen, based upon my background, my environment, and how I was brought up and the things that I experienced, my truth is okay. Now, to someone else, it may be too much. For someone else, it may be too hard. For someone else, it may be, okay, that's just should be common sense, right? But we have to understand that things that are common for me are not common for someone else. And then after we speak our truth, right? And after we explain what our level of expectations are from the other person, we also then can't expect for them just to change, or expect for them just to start walking in our expectations the next day. We have to allow time. We have to allow time for that person and to choose whether or not they are willing to or can meet that level of expectation. I know that I look at, loyalty different than some other people look at loyalty, right? I look at love very different. I'm very open. I'm very, I hug on people when I see them, strangers even sometimes. But some people, everyone is not like that. So I can't expect, because I'm a hugger, that the person that I'm going to go and meet or greet is going to want to hug me back. So many times it's our level of expectations that are hurting us. And then a lot of times we're not expressing what our expectations are. Some of us are in relationships for years and say, well, they've been with me for 10 years. They should know Why? You've never expressed it. And then when they don't meet it, you just get upset. Instead of saying, hey, this bothers me, or explaining why something bothers you. A lot of times we're triggered from a past event, whether it's a past trauma from our childhood or something that's happened to us in a previous relationship, and we're not expressing that. And we're expecting this person to know. And here's the real kicker. If we're on this self-love, self-care journey, we're growing, which means we're evolving, and we're at the core of who we are. Maybe we're not changing, but we're reaching new heights and new levels. We should be, and growing. So that means that our level of expectation is changing. That means our level of what's common is changing, right? So we can't sit in a household and say, well, he's been with me for 10 years or she's been with me for 10 years, and they should just know. Why? As you change and you grow and you evolve, you have to communicate. My needs are different. I could listen, prime example, when I was younger, in terms of a relationship, I didn't need to hear like I love you, and I wasn't very affectionate in terms of hugging all the time and kissing all the time. That's just not where I was. But now in my 40s, guess what? I say I love you every day, probably 4 or 5 times, sometimes 20 times a day, just depending on how I'm feeling. And I love hugs, and so my love language has changed, right? Before it was, gifts, and maybe acts of service. Now it's quality time and affection, right? So it's changed. So I have to be able to communicate those changes. This is what it is now. I have to be able to express that. And I'm hoping that, now with COVID-19 and we have all of this, isolation, right? And we're kind of more forced to be at home with our family, that we are communicating more. We have to find another way to communicate besides punishment communication. And what I call that is when someone doesn't meet an expectation, we get silent on them, or the silent treatment is always the number one go-to, but shutting down, isolating, confiding in someone else. Which, I'm going to be honest with you, there's nothing wrong with having an accountability partner. I have a few in my life. I have some great, great women in my life that, because we all can self-sabotage, something. We all can mess something up. So, I call on them to say, hey, I'm thinking this, or, I was having a conversation with my significant other and, like I'm feeling this kind of way, and they'll redirect me and let me know. Like, hey, wait a minute, you're placing this level of expectation on this person, but you didn't even communicate this is what you needed. And how do you expect them to know? We grew up very, very differently. And, grew up in different states. I mean, so let's talk about, I want to touch on that common for a second. I have a sister who lives in Germany, who I miss so dearly. But if she decides to get married and have children, her children will be raised in Germany, and my children are raised in the United States. Their level of what's common is going to be very different. So we can't say, oh, that's common sense. Well, common is very different depending on country, depending on state, depending on the environment in which you grew up. So we have to start communicating. We have to speak our truth, and we have to not worry about what happens after we speak it. Having those hard conversations. I just happened to have a really, really hard conversation with a friend of mine on Thursday, and it was a new level of openness and vulnerability for me that I had yet to experience. But I had to speak my truth in order for us to go to the next level in our relationship. Right? So that's what happens a lot of times when you're able to speak your truth in your friendships with your significant other. It allows you to open up and go to the next level of things. But if you don't speak your truth, if you don't speak your level of expectations, you stay stagnant and you stay in a place of, not feeling, satisfied or upset. But a lot of times we're doing it to ourselves, ladies. We really are. You have to be able to be, and I'm gonna tell you, I communicate well verbally. Everyone's not the same, and I realize that. So if it's a letter, write that letter. However you need to communicate. Some people communicate through music. Listen to this song. This is how I'm feeling. It may not be my way, but we have to also get away from a right and wrong way. What's right for me is not right for somebody else. Again, that's an expectation. I want for us to grow. I want for us to have experience life on such a grandiose level, and not a perfect level, but just keep growing and leveling up every step of the way in our friendships, with our families, with our significant others. And the only way to do that is to start breaking apart some of these old beliefs and start healing some of that past trauma so that you can speak. Because I realize some of my ladies are very silent because they grew up in silence. Children are to be seen and not heard. Something happens to you and you go communicate that to a family member and they shut you down. We don't talk about those things. What happens in this house stays in this house. So we have to go heal that so that we can open ourselves up to experience love on a different level, and open ourselves up so that our children, right, we can break those generational curses and our children can go on and flourish. Now they're going to have to break their own curses because we're not perfect, right? But some things can't stop with us. So we are going to start speaking and communicating or writing down or sharing this song, however we do it, our level of expectations with our friends, with our significant others, as well as our children. We're going to start being more open and understanding that what's common for me is not common for the next person. We grew up in very different backgrounds, very different environments. And sometimes, which oddly enough, sometimes you can grow up in the same environment and be very different. I look at me, my brother, and my sister. We are all three very different individuals. Grew up in the same household, the same parents, right? So we have to get away from that. I can't expect my brother to act like me. He's very different. I can't expect my sister to act like me. We're very different. Our experience then as we grew up, I'm a mom. I was a mom, with 6 kids. I was married, divorced, right? So it's very different. So I really want to start opening you up to that and opening you up to speaking your truth, and know that your truth is okay. Always for the right people in your life is going to be okay. You will know that your truth is not okay with the wrong people based upon how they act. And not that they change for you, but that they're able to be open enough and understanding enough and empathetic enough to hear you. And maybe work on some things to help, filter through that, right? The wrong person will shut you down. The wrong person won't want to hear where you're coming from. The wrong person will walk away from you, and you needed all of that. So embrace that too. Okay? I love you for listening today. Let's start being more communicative with our friends, our loved ones, and our children. Let's break these chains. Let's get healed. Let's talk about our level of expectation as we continue to grow. And just know, if you're ever having any problems with that, if you ever just need someone to vent to, or to help you understand how to communicate a little bit better, I am here. moesassfitness@gmail.com. moesassfitness LLC on Instagram and Facebook. And just reach out to me, message me. I got you. We can get through this together. And remember, I say every video, it's not just from a life coach, wellness coach, self-love coach aspect. Sometimes you just need an opinion. Sometimes you just need to bounce something off someone. I'm here for you, especially during these times. Because I understand that operating in this new normal is not working well for a lot of us. I need a hug, damn it. So like I said, reach out if you need to. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and I will speak to you next week.